Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, counter-spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve.
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into a time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
Crime drama this hour, William-Gargan, starring as Barrie Craig, confidential investigator. The episode entitled Visitors at Midnight. This episode was originally broadcast May 12th, 1955.
William-Gargan stars as Barrie Craig, confidential investigator.
It never pays to be friendly with murderers. Give them an inch and they'll take a yard, usually rope, tied around your throat and attached to the nearest rafter.
The National Broadcasting Company presents William-Gargan in another transcribed drama of mystery and adventure with America's #1 detective, Barrie Craig, confidential investigator.
Craig speaking. If I try hard, I can remember back to the days before I was in this business, when on going to bed at night, I would always look under my bed. No, not for a blonde, a burglar. There never was one, though. So as the years went by, I stopped looking. I just went to bed. On this particular night, however, I had barely dropped off to sleep when I heard a noise at my window. I was practically asleep, and besides, I wasn't in the mood for burglars. The burglar, however, had other ideas.
It's Craig.
I'm asleep.
You can't see me, can you?
No, and I'd be happier if I couldn't hear you.
I can see you, however. It helps me aim the gun I'm pointing at you more accurately.
Well, I'd hate to have your aim suffer.
Sir Craig, I need some advice. I'm a novelist. I'm writing a book about murder. I'm calling it The Unsolvable Crime.
Well, now that you've got that off your chest.
What I came here for was to have you tell me whether or not the murder my book is about is really unsolvable.
Well, why me?
Because you've had a lot to do with murder, for one thing. Because you're not a policeman, for another.
No argument so far.
The man to be murdered, in my book, that is, has heart disease. He's a crooked broker, a man who deserves to die.
Uh-huh. And he suffers from heart disease.
For this illness, he takes daily, at stated hours, capsules containing heart medicine. His life depends on these capsules. Now then, the murderer, in my book, that is, decides to poison the broker.
Well, that's against the law.
Yes, poisoning, but without poison.
Well, get to the next chapter.
The murderer steals one of the capsules, pours the medicine out, and replaces the medicine with ordinary water. Eventually, the financier takes the capsule, which contains water instead of medicine. He dies of heart failure.
Well, not bad.
Thank you. The poisoner can't be traced through the poison he bought because he didn't buy any. An autopsy would show no poison in his victim's body since there wouldn't be any. Most likely, the murdered man would be assumed to have died a natural death. Well,
what?
Is the crime unsolvable?
Oh, at the moment, I can't see any flaws in it.
Well, if you can't, then I don't imagine the book reviewers will.
Don't you mean the police?
Why should the police be interested in a book I'm writing?
Why should the book reviewers be interested in the murder you're committing?
You're not serious.
You are.
Well, I'm afraid I must leave now. No, don't move. I still have the gun pointing at you. If I had to shoot you, it wouldn't be an unsolvable crime, perhaps. But what good would that do you? Good night, Mr. Craig. Pleasant dreams.
The gentleman in the dark left quickly and efficiently. So I went back to sleep. When I got up the next morning, I decided to pretend the whole thing hadn't happened. It was nothing I could do, and maybe my midnight visitor had really been a novelist. I cherished that happy thought until breakfast.
Your toast, Mr. Craig, in the morning paper.
Thank you.
Oh, you're up early this morning, aren't you?
Well, I'm glad you noticed. Any resemblance between this toast and toast is purely coincidental. What does your chef do? Tan the stuff? Hey.
I beg your pardon?
Very interesting news item here. Halfway down the front page. Take a look.
James W. Baker, noted broker, dies of heart attack as police prepare to arrest him for embezzlement. A friend of yours?
No, but he was a crooked broker, and he had a bad heart.
Oh, is that important, Mr. Craig?
It depends on whether he took his medicine in capsules.
What depends, sir?
Murder. Sure, maybe it was a coincidence. But if it was the kind of coincidence that goes better in books than in reality. James W. Baker was listed in the phone book. So, feeling that maybe the long arm of coincidence had strained a muscle in this particular case, I decided to pay the late Mr. Baker a friendly visit.
Hello.
Hello. This is the Baker home, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I'm Mr. Baker's niece. And you?
Barrie Craig. I'm an old friend of your uncle's.
You're not old.
Well...
And you're not a friend of my uncle's. Come in anyway.
Thank you.
My name is Sandra.
I realize maybe I shouldn't have come today. You must be all broken up by your uncle's death.
Who, me?
Well, the family.
Well, that's me. I'm the family.
Your uncle must have been a lonely man.
He didn't mind. He had me. And the market. And all those people he was swindling, of course. And there were Mr. Hanson and Tommy.
Who's Tommy?
Oh, sort of stunted youth. Uncle's secretary. Very anemic. I always ignore him.
And Hanson?
Hanson was Uncle's lawyer. And I fondly suspect as big a crook as Uncle was. But very spatted, you know?
Spatted?
Yes, on the shoes and gardenia'd in the buttonhole, and I have a sneaking suspicion whiskeyed in the liver.
Sounds nice. Anybody else close to Uncle?
No.
Then it boils down to one of you three.
What does?
Who's happy now that Uncle's dead?
Well, I am. Hanson is. Tommy is.
Well, it just about covers the field. Well, why is everybody so happy?
Uncle had some money. I get it now. Hanson stole from Uncle, and he won't go to jail now. Tommy was implicated in Uncle's swindling. Tommy won't go to jail now.
And who has a very deep, rasping voice, with the trick of dropping his voice at the end of every sentence?
I don't have a very deep voice.
Are Hanson and Tommy around?
Yes, they are. They're sitting around practicing grief-stricken looks for the funeral. That happy event is this afternoon. I'd better get dressed.
Sandra.
Hurry.
Oh, who's hurrying?
I am. Who are you?
Barrie Craig. And you?
Oh, I'm Tommy. I'm Mr. Baker's secretary.
Well, in his condition, he doesn't need a secretary.
Well, then, I'm Mr. Baker's former secretary. No, I'm the former Mr. Baker's secretary. No,
I get it. Relax.
I am relaxed.
Then why are you in such a hurry?
Well, I had to go out to hire some mourners, haven't I?
You have to hire some mourners?
Well, sure, it wouldn't look nice if there were only 3 of us at the funeral.
No. Especially since you'll all be grinning from ear to ear. Incidentally, has your voice ever been deeper?
Heavens, no. Ta-ta.
Goodbye. Oh, back again. Oh, no. Hello?
Good morning. I'm in a hurry. Hanson's my name.
Oh, why are you in such a hurry?
Well, you see, my tailor is expecting me.
Your tailor?
Well, you'd hardly expect me to attend Mr. Baker's funeral in this, would you?
Impossible.
What are you doing here?
Looking for a man with a deep voice.
Sorry, mine isn't. Goodbye. Why are you looking for a man with a deep voice?
Well, he told me how Mr. Baker was going to be murdered.
Well, of course, that explains everything. What did you say?
That's what I said.
But Mr. Baker died of heart failure.
Well, that's another theory. I like mine better.
Dear me. If I only had the time, but my tailor, you know. Goodbye.
I stayed in my chair for a while, staring at the door that had shut behind Hanson. Wondering. I'd been handed my 3 suspects. There was something else, though, that might help, that occurred to me, in a bookstore. And I chose a bookstore in the same neighborhood as Baker's house.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hello. Do you carry medical books?
Why, yes, we do.
Would you happen to have one on the diseases of the heart?
Well, now, we don't stock many. We had one, but we sold it last week.
Oh, that's too bad.
I'm sorry. No, it's funny. The person I sold it to was a very nervous gentleman. I rather suspected at the time that he might have a heart condition himself.
I see. Do you recall his name?
Name? Oh, yes. Yes, I remember. It was, Hanson. That's right, Hanson.
Mr. Hanson's taste in literature was interesting. It occurred to me Mr. Hanson himself, if I could pin him down, might be more interesting still. Hello, Mr. Hanson.
Oh, Mr. Craig. Come in.
Thank you. Well, how did the funeral go this afternoon?
Very sad indeed. Funerals upset me.
Yeah, I can see how that would be. Have you ever tried reading for your nerves? It's supposed to be very soothing.
Oh, I'm afraid I have no patience for books.
Not even books on heart disease?
What was that? Why, Excuse me. Hello? Oh. Yes. Yes, of course. At once. Goodbye.
Bad news? You turned pale.
I'm terribly shocked. Tommy, you know him?
Baker's secretary? Yes, I know him.
Well, it seems that something's happened to him.
What?
He's dead.
Well, that's an inconvenience. May 12, 1955, Barrie Craig Confidential Investigator on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox.
Let's see, if something costs less, but people are happier with it, that sounds like something to look into, and that's MediShare. Maybe you've heard switching to MediShare to pay for healthcare can save the typical family $500 a month, and that's huge, but it's also true that people are way more satisfied after making the switch, too. The customer satisfaction rate for MediShare is double that of the typical health insurance plan. Double. MediShare works. It's been around for more than a quarter century, and members have shared more than $3 billion of each other's bills. People love having telehealth and a huge nationwide PPO network. So, yeah, you can save a ton and like it better. Imagine being happy with how you're taking care of your health care. So if you're self-employed or part of the gig economy, or you just want a plan you're happy with, you can call right now and get a price within 2 minutes. A very, very smart use of 2 minutes. Here's the number you need. 833-34-BIBLE. That's 833-34-BIBLE. 833-34-BIBLE.
Now on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, more of Barrie Craig Confidential Investigator starring William Gargan, May 12th, 1955.
This not only upset Hanson, it set him in motion. The direction was the Baker house. I approved and went along. Hanson, who phoned you?
Sandra. Apparently, she'd been visiting friends, returned home, and found him.
Of course, it might have been an accidental death, which would mean another point of coincidence, but I don't think so. However, if he was murdered...
You seem to have murder on your brain. You said something about the police thinking Baker was murdered, too.
Not the police. Me.
Oh, hello.
Hello, Miss Sander. Have you notified the police?
I phoned them just a few minutes ago. This is his room. I heard the shots.
For when?
About an hour ago.
You phoned Hanson here only 15 minutes ago.
Well, I didn't know what it was then. Tommy was going to join me downstairs. When he didn't, I realized it must have been a shot. There he is.
Yes. Not at all pretty. Definitely dead. The note on his desk.
A suicide note?
Yeah, that's what it's supposed to be. It reads, I killed Baker because if he'd been arrested, I would have gone to jail, too. I thought I got away with it, but the police suspect he was murdered. I can't take it, so excuse the blood. The note's signed Tommy.
Well, that sort of clears that up, doesn't it?
Yeah, except for one thing.
What's that?
Tommy's voice wasn't deep enough. The police showed up in a very little while. Tommy's death seemed to be an obvious suicide. I think the police attributed it to insanity. They didn't know what he meant about Baker's having been murdered. As for me, there didn't seem to be much of anything to do at the moment, so I went home and went to bed. This, it would appear, was going to be a case where I didn't sleep. I resisted the impulse to throw the phone out the nearest window and answered it. I'm asleep, and so should you be.
Craig?
Now that you know I'm at home, good night.
Wait a minute. Craig, you told Sandra about someone who came to you in the middle of the night and told you about Baker's murder.
Yes, I did.
You described that voice very carefully. Craig, would you like to hear it again?
Very much.
Then come down here at once. The Kent Club on Marshall Boulevard, and I can arrange it for you. The man with the voice you described is here.
I'd pretty much given up expecting to hear that voice again. But if Hanson said he'd heard it, then it was something for me to find out about. From the time I got the phone call to the time I got to the club, it must have been about a half an hour.
Craig, I've been waiting for you.
That was the idea, wasn't it?
Yes, but that man whose voice I overheard, whose voice resembled the one you told Sandra about.
Well?
He's gone.
Well, that's not so good. You know who the man is?
No, but I do know something just as good.
What's that?
I know where the man went. I heard him tell his cab driver.
Then let's go there.
Of course, Craig, you realize that I'm not absolutely sure it's the man you want.
Me, I'm grabbing at straws. Anything at the moment is worth trying.
That voice did sound like your description. Baker belonged to the club, too.
It's a possibility. Hanson, Sandra told me you'd been stealing money from Baker.
I don't think I care for that kind of conversation.
I'm not making conversation. I'm asking questions. Was she telling the truth?
What difference does it make?
If Baker was murdered, it might make a lot of difference.
You say if Baker was murdered. Aren't you sure?
We'll know better, won't we, when we meet this man whose voice you overheard?
Yes, we'll know better. The only thing is, suppose something happens to him?
Hey, are we still in the United States? We've been traveling for hours.
Apparently he lives farther out than we realized. Shouldn't be much farther. Craig, mind if I ask you something?
Go ahead.
It's about Tommy. I can see him committing suicide, all right. He never impressed me as being much of anything. But somehow I can't see him murdering Baker.
People rarely kill other people in front of witnesses.
That's not what I meant. Craig, are you sure Baker was murdered?
No.
But you said before...
I said I suspected it. That's something else. However, I am sure of one thing.
What's that?
I'm sure Tommy...
Yes?
...was murdered. I was never a Boy Scout, so I don't know very much about direction in the country. But I was surprised at where I wound up. Where the car wound up was a bumpy dirt road in a very secluded hunk of landscape.
Well, that must be the house up ahead.
Yes, and the house is dark.
Probably took him less time to get here. Must have gone to bed.
Probably.
There's a mailbox. House number on it. Yes, this is it.
Well, let's go visit.
Craig, do you think he'll recognize her?
Sure. I couldn't see him, but he saw me clearly enough.
That's not so good. Are you armed, in case he tries anything?
No, but maybe he won't try anything.
Suppose he refuses to say anything, to speak at all, when he sees you.
That'll answer our question just as well, won't it?
I suppose so. Shall I ring?
Sure.
Oh, that would be warning him, though, wouldn't it? Suppose he hears the doorbell, looks out, sees you. He might run away.
He might.
Look, why don't I go around to the back? Then in case he tries to run.
That's a good idea. You do that.
All right. And be careful.
Sure, I'll be very careful. The moon picked out the door, glinted on the metal doorbell. I pushed it. It was a nice night, not too warm, not too cold. However, a guy named Craig was cold. Walking into a dark house with somebody waiting on the other side of the door could have its unpleasant aspects. Nobody answered the doorbell. I hadn't expected anyone to, so I tried the handle. It was very dark inside. I pulled out a book of matches and hesitated. In the darkness, when you strike a match, you make a very nice target. I wasn't sure I liked the idea. On the other hand, I needed a little more action. It would settle things. I lit a match. There was a light switch on the wall, and I flipped it on. Then I walked into the parlor.
From May 12th, 1955, William-Gargan, starring as Barrie Craig, confidential investigator, here on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. The conclusion comes up following these words right here from your favorite radio station. Hang on.
Radio? Why should I advertise on radio? There's nothing to look at, no pictures.
Listen, you can do things on radio you couldn't possibly do on TV.
That'll be the day.
All right, watch this. Okay, people, and now when I give you the cue, I want the 700-foot mountain of whipped cream to roll into Lake Michigan, which has been drained and filled with hot chocolate. Then the Royal Canadian Air Force will fly overhead towing a 10-ton maraschino cherry, which will be dropped into the whipped cream to the cheering of 25,000 extras. All right, cue the mountain. Air Force. Cue the maraschino cherry. Okay, 25,000 cheering extras. Now, you want to try that on television?
Well...
You see, radio is a very special medium because it stretches the imagination.
Doesn't television stretch the imagination?
Up to 27 inches, yes.
She was born in a humble shack amidst the lemon groves of Goleta, California.
Mommy, don't cry. You know what they say? When life gives you lemons, make lemonade. I was gonna say life sucks, and then you die. But I like yours better.
And with that, Alexandra Johnson launched her lemonade stand.
Lemonade, nickel a glass.
Every day, even during the frigid California winters, a bone-chilling 72 degrees, you could find her.
You can have it sour, you can have it sweet. Little girl's lemonade will knock you off your feet.
The little girl with the sour brew wanted more, national distribution, franchises, and so she rolled out a well-budgeted advertising campaign.
Me and the rest of the dockwakers only drink little girl lemonade.
She was made president of the International Sour Drink Association and chosen to give the keynote speech at their convention.
You all set with words of wisdom, honey? You know what they say, Mommy. Always advertise so consumers think of your product first? I was gonna say never swallow a lemon seed or a watermelon on your tummy.
This fabricated but interesting story is to remind you that it's called advertising and it works.
Put your message on this national advertising platform by emailing classicradiotheater@gmail.com. classicradiotheater@gmail.com. Now on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, the conclusion of Barrie Craig, confidential investigator, from May 12th, 1955.
There wasn't much more to the house than that. Parlor, bedroom, kitchen, and that was all. The bedroom door was open, and no one was in there. The kitchen door was shut, but no light leaked out from under the door. Offhand, you'd have said nobody was home. And maybe nobody was. So I sat down near the table lamp that was the room's only illumination. Somebody made noises in the kitchen. Could have been mice. It could have been the mystery man with the deep voice, or it could have been a high wind that was slowly swinging the kitchen door open. I decided, whatever it was, that I didn't want the lamp to glare in its eyes, so turned off the lamp and quietly shifted from my position next to the lamp to the other side of the room. That even matters up. It was dark in the kitchen, it was dark in the parlor, and nobody could see anybody. My unlit friend shifted slightly, and I began to get bored. So I grabbed what felt like an ashtray and threw it against the wall on the opposite side of the room. The stranger didn't like ashtrays. He tried to shoot the one I threw, but the gun flash gave his position away. I know where you are. My gun's pointing at where you are, so drop yours. It didn't work. I hadn't expected it to, which is why I moved fast after speaking. I figured he still had 3 more bullets, any one of which hitting me could be painful, so... Drop the pop gun, huh?
All right.
Thanks. You can use a little electricity now. Hello, Hanson.
Craig.
My, you're bleeding. Your arm?
Yes, I didn't know it was you.
Who'd you think it was?
Well, I waited outside for a while. Nothing happened, so I came in.
And then, when you didn't recognize my voice in the dark, you started shooting at me, huh?
That's right.
Thinking I was the owner of this house?
Of course.
But, Hanson, how could you think that when you yourself own this house?
What? But I don't understand.
You're not very subtle. When you asked me if I was armed before we got into the house...
You said you weren't.
Of course. You see, I knew you were going to try to kill me.
What? How did you know that?
Because you overheard the man with the deep voice.
Well, what was wrong with that?
You couldn't have heard him. You see, Hanson, the man with the deep voice is dead. The police were glad to get Hanson, especially after I pointed out to them that Tommy's suicide note was a fake. They couldn't have known that, but I did. As I told Sandra, first about the note, you see, it said, the police suspect Baker was murdered, but the police suspected nothing of the sort.
You did, though.
Yes, but the only one I told was Hanson, and Hanson himself assured me he never spoke to Tommy. Therefore...
Hanson killed Tommy after making him write the note?
Right.
But, Barry, what about the man who spoke to you in the middle of the night? He wasn't Hanson.
No.
He couldn't have been Tommy.
No.
Well, then who was he?
Sandra, there were 3 people involved in Baker's possible murder, we thought. You, Hanson, and Tommy.
That's so.
Well, we were wrong. There were 4 people involved.
4? Who's the 4th?
The murderer. Baker himself.
Oh.
Then we asked, why did the man come to me in the first place?
Well, he said to make sure his method of murdering somebody would never be detected.
Yeah, that's what he said. But in coming to me, didn't he make sure of the very opposite? Wasn't he making sure that it would be detected?
Oh, Barry, you're very, very brilliant.
Oh, wait a minute. Now, Baker knew he was going to jail. He also knew that very probably Hanson would try to murder him. He didn't care very much. He was an old man and a sick one, but he did want to make sure his murderer would be punished. That's funny.
What is?
If Hanson hadn't tried to make doubly sure he was safe, he probably would be safe. I doubt whether there'd have been enough evidence to convict him of your uncle's murder. But he'll hang for Tommy.
You've been listening to William Gargan in another exciting transcribed mystery drama from the adventures of Barrie Craig, confidential investigator. Tonight's story, Visitor at Midnight, was written by Louis Vittes. The National Broadcasting Company has just brought you an NBC Radio Network production with William Gargan starring as Barrie Craig, confidential investigator. Directed by Andrew C. Love. Our cast included Ken Christie, Kay Stewart, Jack Carroll, Byron Kane, and Jack Crucian.
May 12th, 1955, Barrie Craig, confidential investigator on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox.
Are you suffering with arthritis or osteoporosis? Do you have diabetes? Did you know that these are just 2 of the hundreds of diseases that have seen improvement with Dr. Wallach's incredible longevity products? You can't get them at a health food store. The only way to get them is to call us at 800-214-0065. That's 800-214-0065. Do you have heart disease, fibromyalgia, or high blood pressure? Do you have a terrible time losing weight? Dr. Wallach can help. He was a veterinarian and cured diseases in animals. He felt that he could do the same for humans, so he became a physician. Over 50 years of research and helping people like you goes into every bottle of Dr. Wallach's amazing discoveries. Do you want to feel better? Learn how to treat the cause of your problem rather than covering up the symptoms with drugs. Call 800-214-0065. That's 800-214-0065.
Now on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, an episode of the soap opera Claudia. This was originally broadcast on May 12th, 1948.
And now, Claudia. Boom doodle-doo, boom doodle-doo.
There it is, Mama, right there on the bend of the road, Jared Tucker's house.
He didn't know what he let himself in for, having you two as neighbors.
And boarding our cat and dog in the bargain.
Hey, I don't see any sign of Bluff, do you?
Nary a sign.
Jared probably has him out back somewhere.
Do you see Shakespeare?
If I can't see a Great Dane, how can I possibly see a cat?
Do you think he'll know us?
He'll know you, but there's a serious question whether he'll be on speaking terms with you. Anybody who'd run off to New York and leave a Great Dane with strangers for 5 days doesn't deserve to be spoken to by the Great Dane.
Well, Jared Tucker is no stranger.
No stranger than what?
Oh, that's terrible. Such a pun. Here's the house. Not one cat, not one dog. Well, I don't even see Mr. Tucker. I'll get out and look for him, shall I?
I'll go with you.
I do not volunteer.
Howdy, folks. Glad to see you, glad to see you.
Hello, Mr. Tucker.
Mr. Tucker?
We're back.
Glad to see you, mighty glad to see you.
We certainly appreciate you taking care of Bluff and Shakespeare for us, Mr. Tucker. I hope they haven't been too much trouble for you.
Trouble? Did you say trouble? There ain't been no trouble, hardly. Where'd you get the idea there was any trouble?
Are they all right?
Cat's fine, tip-top. Here he is, fine.
And Bluff, how's he?
Bluff, is that what you call a dog, hey?
Yeah, we told you before we left. David, didn't we tell Mr. Tucker Bluff's name?
Well, yes, we told him Bluff's name was Bluff.
Bluff, hey? Dang name slipped my mind. Might have helped some if I'd have remembered it.
Well, how is he? Tell us, Mr. Tucker.
Oh, it's this here Bluff you're talking about now.
Yes, of course it is. How is Bluff?
Well, there ain't no reason why he shouldn't be fine, too. Nope, no reason at all.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Nope, there ain't no reason at all why that dog shouldn't be just fine and dandy.
Well, nothing's wrong, is it, Mr. Tucker?
Wrong? No, indeedy, nothing's wrong. What makes you think there's anything wrong? You folks just hold your horses a minute and stop rushing me, and I'll get the cat.
Say, that's funny. Mr. Tucker looks as though he's limping.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he's going to be as glad to see us as we are to see him, David?
He'll be overjoyed.
Mama likes to pretend that she doesn't love Bluff.
I suspect she's a bigger bluff than Bluff is.
You suspect wrong.
Here comes Jared Tucker with Shakespeare. Oh, Shakespeare, you sweet old thing.
Well, folks, here's your little cat.
You give him right to me, Mr. Tucker. I'll take him on my lap. Here, kitty, 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 kitty. And now, Bluff?
Where is he, Mr. Tucker?
Bluff? That's that dog of yours. Well...
Well, you don't have to get him yourself. You look all tuckered out, Mr. Tucker. Just tell me where you've got Bluff tied, and I'll get him myself.
Thank you, son. I got this here limp, you see.
Yes, I noticed.
Oh, I hope it's not anything serious.
Oh, nothing serious at all, Mrs. Naughton. Leastways, I hope it ain't serious. Just favoring my right foot some. Seems to have twisted my ankle today.
Then you stay right here, Mr. Tucker, and I'll get Bluff.
You will not get him. I'll get him.
I would have got him, only my ankle, you know.
Twisted ankle can be very painful.
How did it happen, Mr. Tucker?
Oh, 'twar nothing at all. I got climbing the wall in back of the apple grove, back of the house. 'Course, as soon as it happened, Delilah, my sister, she tells me I hadn't ought to have been climbing the wall in the first place. That's woman for you. Thinks a man gets to an age when he don't know how to climb a wall.
The fact remains that you did twist your ankle.
Why were you climbing the wall, Mr. Tucker?
For the same reason a chicken crosses a road. Get to the other side, young feller. Twisted her as neat as you'd twist a gooseberry off its stem, did you?
Well, your foot's not quite off its stem yet. You still seem to have it.
Of course, it couldn't be more useless if I hadn't got it. Pains so much. But that's not the answer to why I was climbing the wall. I was climbing it to get my shovel, which I'd left down in the apple orchard. If I hadn't had my hands so full of dog, I'd have brought the shovel back with me in the first place.
What was Bluff doing in the orchard?
That's what I was getting to, if you'd stop interrupting.
We're not interrupting you, Mr. Tucker.
You interrupted me right then.
Well,
You women get so's you don't know whether you're interrupting a man or not. As I was about to say, when that young Baldwin tree I set out there 2 years ago got thrown down...
Blown down? Was there a windstorm here while we were in New York?
I said thrown down, not blown down.
Oh.
Oh, I don't know. A hurricane could have done more damage than that there dog of yours.
You mean Bluff threw down your apple tree?
With malice aforethought?
Now, let me get this straight, Mr.
Wasn't
Tucker.
anything straight about it. It was all in a heap, it was. The dog and his chain twisted and snagged and snarled into it.
Oh, you mean you tied him to the apple tree?
Don't mean anything of the sort. I tied him to the range house I got for the chickens up on the other side of the barn.
I don't think I follow you.
I ain't hard to follow, but you should have been here to follow that dog.
Well, let's go back to the beginning.
There's no sense of going all the way back to the beginning. The real rip snorting only commenced when I hitched him to the chicken house.
And then what happened?
What happened shouldn't have happened to a chicken house.
But what happened?
They took off.
What took off, Mr. Tucker?
The dog in the chicken house. The chicken house didn't go so far as the dog. The chain broke.
I am beginning to see the light.
I'm confused.
Well, I don't see the connection between all this and your ankle, Mr. Tucker.
There was plenty of connection, altogether too much connection. You see, when I caught up with the dog, he was over across the wall in the apple orchard.
Mm-hmm.
So I tied him to that young Baldwin tree.
Everything is becoming very clear to me now.
And then what happened?
Well, I had to hurry back to catch all the hens that were running around loose. The hen house being off its foundations, they took it into their heads to go places. Chickens is crazier than some people.
And after you had corralled the hens,
Well, that took quite a spell. After that, I went back to see to the dog.
And then?
Well, that brings us right to where we were when you interrupted me.
Hmm.
The tree was thrown over, and the dog and the chain, and the tree was snarled and snaggled and trussed sweeter than you ever seen a hawk tie.
And...
Yes, well, that's where I made my mistake. I unhitched the dog. If I'd left him in the fix he got himself in, I wouldn't be in the fix I got myself in.
Mr. Tucker, are you sure Bluff is all right?
Is the dog all right? Is the dog all right? Who says anything about the dog not being all right? Well, why shouldn't he be all right? You know what comes from always looking on the dark side of things?
What?
Stop saying what and let Mr. Tucker get on.
Well, I didn't get fur.
Well, we haven't got to the shovel and the ankle yet, Mr.
Well, they're coming. I got the dog back, and this time I tied him to the house, figuring that he'd find that was too much to pull down. That's what I figured.
That's what you figured.
Yes, I figured it that way.
Oh.
David, I'm beginning to figure.
Well, don't.
Well, then when I got the shovel so's I could set the apple tree back into the ground, and I just got her planted when there was a hoot and a holler from my sister Delilah up there to the house. So I come a-running.
That was when the ankle twisted.
Nope, son. The ankle comes later.
Well, let's get back to the house and Delilah's hoot and holler.
Well, we're back to the house, and there's a hoot and holler laying in front of you.
We're getting close.
But, Mr. Tucker, your porch railing is lying flat on the lawn.
Yep, there she is. But that ain't all of it.
You mean there's more to this story?
More to the story and more to the rail. The big corner post be the stairs, like the one that's still standing there. That's the one that ain't.
You mean Bluff pulled that down?
Yep.
David, he's a very naughty dog.
Yeah, and now, Mr. Tucker, the only thing that isn't clear, where is the dog?
Well, that's it. Like I've been telling you. If I could find the corner post of my porch rail, and I could find your dog, 'cause he's on the other end of it.
You mean he's gone? He's run away?
Well, I wouldn't exactly say that, Mrs. Norton.
Just exactly what would you say, Mr. Tucker?
Well, I would use another word than run. Walk, maybe. Trudge, maybe, but not run. That corner post is a sight heavier than you'd think.
But he's lost.
Well, Mrs. Norton, I wouldn't go quite so far as to saying your dog is lost. Of course, he ain't here. But there's a heap of difference between his being not here and his being lost.
But for all practical purposes.
He ain't here.
David, something terrible may have happened to him.
Well, Bluff's a pretty big dog, darling, and more than likely he'll be able to take care of himself. You haven't seen him since, Mr. Tucker?
Nary hide nor hair of him. Delilah and me, we're... Well, Mr. Norton, I kind of wished it was me wasn't here instead of your dog.
Oh, but we're not blaming you, Mr. Tucker.
David, where will we start looking for Bluff?
Well, let's see. Let's try to figure it out. The first place I'm going to look is home. Come along, Mrs. Brown, and you hold on to your daughter I don't want to lose her tonight. Hey, Bluff! Hey, Bluff! Come on, old boy.
It is certainly a gloomy homecoming.
Oh, where do you think he is?
I don't know, darling. I hoped he'd be here.
I don't think anything serious could have happened to him.
Oh, he could have got that chain caught in the brush somewhere and be trapped.
Well, what's a little brush to Bluff? Are you forgetting Mr. Tucker's chicken house? His apple tree and his front porch? Come on, you two. We'll open the door and get our things out of the car. And I tell you what.
What? What do we do next?
While you start dinner, I'll get in the car and then I'll drive around the countryside and I'll look
you
for
might
Bluff.
get lost.
Well, don't worry about me.
Oh, darling. David, what happened? What have you done? Have you hurt
am
yourself?
killed. I
Come on,
am
you better sit
killed.
down or something.
If I'd broken my ankle, I think I've wrenched it
Listen,
badly.
sit down and let me
Ouch.
look at it.
Now, watch out. I tripped over something right here in the front door.
David, watch out.
Yeah, no, it's all right. It's all right.
It's the...
Say, that looks like...
It's the post from Mr. Tucker's porch railing.
You know what that means? Bluff is home.
Or he has been. Anyway, it's a good sign. You know, he's a very intelligent dog.
Certainly
Telephone.
Telephone, David.
Yes, that's the impression I got, too. Darn, this key, I never knew it to fail when you're in a hurry.
Oh, let me help you. Hurry up, hurry up.
Hello, David Norton speaking. Who? Oh, Mr. Tucker. He is? Good news. Bluff just turned up at Tucker's place.
Then he's safe.
And sound. And I have some news for you, Mr. Tucker. Yes, you remember that corner post from your porch rail, the one you haven't got? Well, in some unaccountable way, it is sitting on my front porch. Yes, well, I'll bring it back to you tomorrow. And look, Mr. Tucker, Bluff isn't tied to anything right now, is he? You took the chain off, so you're sure he couldn't get tied around anything. I wouldn't want any more damage caused to your place. All right, thank you, Mr. Tucker.
I'll get the car and bring him home.
You'll do nothing of the kind.
Why?
Hey, Bluff! Well, Claudia, the prodigal pup returns.
If you're like a lot of women who manage their own homes, you may have fallen into the habit of eating a hasty and not very appealing lunch. Here's a suggestion that will add considerably to your enjoyment of the noonday meal, and it doesn't involve a minute's preparation. Simply reach into the refrigerator for a bottle of ice-cold Coke. Add Coca-Cola to your sandwich or salad or dessert, and you'll find that you lunch refreshed.
Well, Mr. King, that could have been a good deal worse, couldn't it?
So Bluff turned up at last. Well, I certainly was relieved.
And I'll be relieved when someone else turns up at the Norton farm on Monday.
Oh, you mean Gertrude, the plumber's sister-in-law, and the Nortons' new maid.
Will she stay with the Nortons, do you think, Mr. King?
Oh, I really can't say, Mrs. Brown.
Now, confidentially, Mr. King, and I promise not to breathe a word of this to anyone, is Gertrude really a good cook?
I'm sure I don't know, but I promise you I'll look in on Monday to find out.
You'll find me looking in ahead of you, Mr. King. Well, then, good evening.
Good evening, Mrs. Brown. And as I was about to say, every day, Monday through Friday, Claudia comes to you transcribed with the best wishes of your friendly neighbor who bottles Coca-Cola. So listen again Monday at the same time.
From May 14th, 1948, Claudia here on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Please thank this radio station and support their advertisers. It is their kindness and courtesy that allows us to be with you each and every time we roll around here on your favorite radio station. The advertisers pay the bills, the station puts us on. We appreciate both of them. Hope you will also, if you miss a day, you don't have to miss a single show. You You can find all of our shows available at iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon, or Facebook by searching Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Or just go to my webpage, classicradio.stream. The shows are available there, along with more information on classic radio collecting, all of our social media links, and you can also contact me there, classicradio.stream. Thanks for tuning in. Tell all your friends the great radio shows are right here at this spot on the dial. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite station.